Over to Mike, whose topic is a new way of life. Over to you.
Thanks, Roz. Hi, I'm Mikey. I'm an addict. Turn the light off. Thanks for reading, Liz. Thanks everyone else for reading and being here. As Liz was reading that, I was thinking I should have read the topic I chose before I actually chose it, because I'm in a struggle here. I should have gone for the step one chair. But anyway, it's nice to kind of be in a meeting. I've had quite a busy day at work. I don't work a million miles away, and it's been pretty busy and pretty frantic and lots of stuff going on. And then I jumped in a taxi and I've not been here before, so that felt a bit kind of frantic. So it's nice just to settle down a little bit and do what I do by coming to meetings. I was just thinking on the way over here, because just a little bit of kind of data about me. So I got clean first in '93 in a treatment centre in St Anne's, and it was a 12-step treatment centre, and I stayed clean for 6 years, and then I relapsed around the time of the millennium, and then I got clean again sometime in April 2002. So I'm 23 years clean as I sit here today. Thank you. And, it really is genuinely as a consequence of coming to NA. What I've been thinking about, because I have kind of thought about coming and doing this tonight. I would have liked to thought about it a bit more, but like I say, it's been a bit of a mad day. It's just how different my life is, and how much I can kind of take it for granted. But, in contrast to that kid who first went to meetings at 20 in Manchester, chronic heroin addict, felt like his life was over, to getting clean and then getting educated and then coming to London and having a family and all the stuff, the spoils of recovery. All those things are just so deeply rooted in coming to meetings and doing this stuff. And, I'm not going to try and fool anyone. I don't like this all the time. Do you know what I mean? I don't like doing this all the time. I find some of the step work a bit laborious, a bit challenging. I drag my feet with it. But the thing I do is I do it. And one of the main things that I've done regularly over time is come to meetings. One thing I've never stopped doing is coming to meetings. And like I said, the reason I'm referencing today, because I was thinking today about the personalities I've had to negotiate, the business things that I've had to negotiate. It's been a day of kind of negotiations basically, and I'm pretty good at it. I'm pretty good at that stuff, and the reason for that, is because I've been doing it. I've been doing the job for a long time, but a lot of those negotiating skills and my skills in life have been either picked up whilst I was using, or picked up since I've been clean. Because, like I said, I've had a couple of tricky negotiations today about money, but, that's nothing in comparison to negotiating with a crack dealer who's pointing a gun at you at 4 o'clock on a Tuesday morning on a council estate. What I've done today compared to getting out of that situation is a piece of cake. The reason I keep coming to meetings is because, when I relapsed, I kind of, since I got clean again after my relapse, I was kind of left with this thought of why did I do that? Why did it seem like such a good idea to do that when really quickly it became apparent that it was a really bad idea and there was nothing I could do about it? What was it that led me to that? And I guess the point I'm trying to get to, the reason that coming to meetings and doing this stuff's really important is that, I truly believe that by the action of coming to a meeting or engaging with a recovering addict or doing something that's recovery related is practically putting into practice, the first 3 steps. Because by coming here tonight, I'm admitting that I'm powerless over addiction and my life can become unmanageable. And I accept that I have a tendency for temporary states of insanity if that unmanageability isn't treated and it becomes powerless. And I know that I need to come to be restored to sanity on a regular basis, because otherwise the rationalisation, the justification, the disease of the disease pushes me into a place where, you know, I've got a great life, yeah, but left unchecked on my own, everything that I've got that's great can start to feel like a bit of a pain in the arse. That's how it starts. And then it's fuck this person, fuck that person, fuck them, why am I doing all this? And I just lose the ability to see the beauty in life, you know. And I'm going to give you a couple of, like, might sound like really boring examples, but, you know, last weekend, you know, I've got 2 children, one 21, one 18. They were both away. My wife was away. And it was on me to get the Christmas tree, yeah? So I can't find the Christmas, anywhere that's selling the Christmas tree, but I'm getting the Christmas tree. So I found the Christmas tree, and I've got it in the car. I'm thinking, this on my own, struggling. I'm thinking, this fucking Christmas tree weighs a ton. I've never felt a tree feel so heavy. But anyway, get it in the car, get it home, cut it open, and it's like unfolded into this like fucking huge thing. Do you know what I mean? I'm you know, and you know the point I'm trying to get to. Then I find all the Christmas decorations, and I'm carting them about, and I've slipped down and all these things. Now, I can view that situation, this is just one situation, in one of 2 ways. And I had a great time getting that shit together and putting it on the tree. And do you know why? Because all the ornaments were made by my kids when they were younger. And I'm remembering when I'm getting them out, oh, I did that and that, and there's pictures of them. And I decorated the tree. Now, I had a great day, I had the Christmas songs on, but, and I had a fun time. But that day, yeah, if I'm not doing this, is a recipe for fucking resentment, yeah? Because it's like, why am I getting the fucking tree again on my own? You know, my son's in the gym fucking 4 times a week. He's costing me a fortune in protein powders. Where's the muscles? You know, where's the muscle when I need it? Why does everybody disappear when I need some help? You know, I fucking hell, I've tripped down the stairs. Why am I getting fucking dust on me? And it's all about me perception on things. And what coming to meetings does and being in recovery is, it's that thing of like a new pair of glasses. It's like turning the binoculars the right way around. It just makes me see things more clearly. And the reason that that's important for me is that, you know, the description of the disease of addiction, you know, I truly believe that I had the condition long before I ever picked up drugs. You know, I, as a young kid, could not wait to start using drugs. You know, my dad was kind of on that beatnik hippie scene, you know, travelling around Europe, and he used to tell me stories about being on Formentera and dropping acid and all this stuff. And it was like, he was telling me, it was like a warning about drugs. And it just sounded amazing. It just sounded like, you know, I didn't hear any warning. And I just thought, you know, I can't wait to fucking get involved in that. And I started young, you know, before I could get my hands on drugs, you know, it was like solvents and anything at all that could remotely be inhaled was. And then it progressed onto other things. And, you know, I took to it like a duck to water. I never had any fear around drugs, you know. I never had any fear around taking drugs. You know, I was an intravenous drug user at 17 years old. You know, when kids were taking E's and going to raves, I was shooting whiz and got, you know, it was like the thing about me when I was young, the things that should have frightened me didn't, and the things that shouldn't have frightened me did. So normal everyday life, you know, just like going to work, getting an education, all those things just freaked me out. But the drugs thing was just, I really took to it. And I do believe that, I don't know whether I struggled because I was already like using substances, or I used substances because I was struggling, but something wasn't quite right. And what I believe is that, you know, my life was unmanageable. I couldn't manage my life being my thoughts and my emotions. And, you know, I don't know whether it's because where I grew up or the environment that I grew up, but I couldn't tell anyone. You know, if you told anybody the truth or what was going on, you know, you were just going to be a target. So I told nobody anything, and I put on a front, and I struggled, and I found solace in changing the way that I felt. And so when I was unmanageable, what happened, because I couldn't live with that, I was looking for and escape. You know, I wanted to get out of my head because I didn't enjoy living with that in that state. And you know, I had a great time to begin with. You know, I was 16. It was 1988. You know, Acid House was kicking off. My friend's sister worked for Factory Records. We got into the Hacienda for free. You know, it was just like the most amazing thing ever. And I went from being, you know, a school kid to meeting people and, you know, going out with no money and coming back with loads of money. You know, I was earning more money than my parents were. You know, it was like the best. You know, driving around in taxis, going out for dinner. You know, I was like 16, 17 years old and I loved it. And it all changed really quickly. And I'm going to kind of not get into the kind of drug things, but the reason I'm talking about that unmanageability is because that's why I need to keep coming to meetings now regularly keep doing this, because what happens is that unmanageability creeps in, and the unmanageability is the way that I perceive myself and the rest of the world and how I think about things and how I feel about things. And the reason I've given that Christmas tree example is, you know, situations like that combined can lead me to a point where I just think, fuck it, fuck them, fuck them, fuck that, fuck this. And what happens is, if I'm living in the disease and in the discomfort of untreated addiction, my life becomes unmanageable. And what happens is last time what happened whilst I was clean is that I became powerless over picking up the first one again, even though I was clean. Because with the unmanageability and the powerlessness, I slip into insanity. Because to get out of that disease, I start with fanciful thinking. It'll be great if I do this, you know, it'd be great if I do that. And then, so coupled with that insanity, if that insanity isn't restored by doing this, then I start to act on it. And it's pretty fucking, you know, number one, it's a bit kind of, you know, the things that will get me using again are, like I said, are feeling like everything's shit, even though everything's great. You know, I've got a great life. When I cleaned up again, you know, within 3 months of getting clean, I've got a job in London. I met the woman who I'm now married to for 21 years, and everything changed really quickly just when I recommitted to this. But what the tendency to do is, if I'm living with untreated addiction, is I need to either treat it with this or I'll pick up. And you know, my using is because, again, you know, the kind of rationalisation and justification that I can slip into is, you know, some of it's quite juvenile, if I'm honest. You know, stupid, but I'll believe it because it's insane, but I'll act on it because I believe it. And it's things like, you know, what you need to do, Mike, you know, because everyone's pissing you off and you're carrying the weight of it all, you know. Draw all your money out the bank, yeah? Draw all of it out. And book a first class, I don't know what it is, first class ticket to Los Angeles, yeah? You know, get yourself round fucking West Hollywood, yeah? Get to some of those parties, you know. Next thing you know, just sniff it, don't smoke it, no needles, yeah? It'll be great, you'll be really sociable. You know, the next thing you know, you'll be like congering around the swimming pool with girls in bikinis. You know, there's a kind of, you know, rap soundtrack in the background. You know, you probably bump into some film director. Fucking worked out for Statham. You know, might work out for you. You know, and this is like the madness, yeah, because I need a fantasy. Because I'm feeling like shit. Because I'm not doing this. And that's it. That's just it. And that fantasy gets, you know, what I do is I go, yeah, go and get the money. Don't get it all, but go and get the money. But before you go and book that ticket, just go there and do that. And I go there and I do that, and I don't go anywhere near Hollywood, do you know what I mean? The next thing I know, I'm creeping around a fucking empty house at 4 o'clock on a Wednesday morning, avoiding squeaky floorboards, convinced I'm under surveillance, Usually at the top of the stairs, if I'm honest, in my pants with a knife, sweating like fuck, terrifying. Do you know what I mean? Can hear the fucking neighbours talking about me, you know. And that, by the way, is before I get on drugs that cause me a problem. Do you know what I mean? Because for me, I was like, you know, don't stay off the brown. Yeah, that's what's gonna fuck you again. And the other thing that was coupled with that in my relapse was that, because I was so young when I got clean, you know, I didn't really have that much to lose. Do you know what I mean? I didn't have houses and, you know, marriages and all that stuff. And I just remember thinking, do you know what? You know, you were just young. You know, anyone would get addicted to heroin if they took it for long enough, you know. And, you know, maybe you'd be all right with a drink. You know, you didn't even like fucking drinking. Do you know what I mean? So maybe you can do it. Because that used to be my rationale. If I don't like the substance, I'll do it. Because I know it won't be a problem because I don't like it. And I remember thinking at the time, you know, I was working in London. I'll end on this because I just want to kind of explain that, you know, some of the you know, the crackersness that can slip through my mind and how important it is even at this late, you know, stage in my recovery to keep coming and doing this. I was working as a student placement in London. I was 6 years clean, and you know, everyone was going out on a Friday night, and I'd never been in a workplace and everyone getting excited going out around Carnaby Street. Never experienced that. And I was looking at it and I was so envious of these people. And they're going, where are you going tonight? I was going, and they're going, no, where are you going? I'm fucking church hall, sitting with people, moaning again. And I'm watching them all going out, and I remember sitting there thinking, fucking hell, I know what's going on here. They all go out, yeah, round Carnaby Street in the bars, having a little drink, the shoulders are loosening up, they're talking business. That's when all the opportunities get discussed, and that's when you get the better job, mate. So if you were to go out with them and have a little drink, it's not your thing, yeah, don't let them in on the secret, but, you know, maybe you could have a little drink, you might get a better job, you know, pay rise, better job, you know, maybe get with a girl that you want to be with, you know, settle down, you know, get a little flat somewhere in town, you know, house in the country, you know, pony for my daughter, quad bike for my kids, you know, and I put all this, like, what was going to happen on just having a little kind of drink with them, and which is insane, by the way, when you look at my track record, and you know, it was on that fucking fanciful information that I based the decision of picking up a drink. And you know, I remember in rehab they said I expected to be in a crack house by midnight, and I wasn't, you know, and it was different my using second time round, but what I lost immediately was my connection with this. And what happened to me, even when I went back home, went in all the madness, I went to go out with loads of lunatics, I was at it, and even when I was with those people, I felt that loneliness again, and what I'd lost the connection that I get when I come and do this stuff, because for me it's, you know, it's almost like I've got a selective amnesia. You know, I'm able to choose which bits of me using to forget. And then I've got like this filmic ability to create a trailer for what my using would look like. You know, and it's that description of going to Los Angeles and stuff. And the reality for me is very different. You know, like I said, I'm in recovery, my wife's in recovery. Because we come and do this stuff, our 21-year-old hasn't seen his mum and dad using, and our 18-year-old hasn't seen her mum and dad using, and that is not because of us, that's because of this. And even at 23 years clean, whatever Jane is, you know, that's why it's really important to keep coming and doing this stuff, because, you know, like I said, I've got this thing of, I've got money now, so I'll be okay. But the reality is, and it's, I guess it's a start reality, is, you know, it would not be very long before I would know where the money is in the house. You know, it wouldn't be very long until my wife and people that I care about have to take their handbag with them. It wouldn't be very long before the copper jar that the kids have been putting pennies in is gone. You know, it wouldn't be very long before dad's going out and not coming home. It wouldn't be very long that there's a very real chance that their dad could go out and never come back. And that's the reality of my using. And so, you know, even when some days I don't want to do this and it's hard and I can't be asked for the steps and I feel like it's a bit embarrassing and all that stuff, you know, that's why it's critical that I keep coming and doing this stuff. You know, like I said, I'm a little bit hot and cold with the step work. I speak to my sponsor, you know, but I do it. You know what I mean? It's like I do come to meetings. That's the cornerstone of all this for me. Is regular meetings, and just kind of like putting one foot in front of the other and keeping things simple and trying to take things one day at a time, really. But I think that's. Is that nearly there? Or do you want some jokes or anecdotes?
You can have a joke, yeah.
No, by 6 seconds. How was I even look at it? There you go. But that's me.
Thanks, Mike.